Into the Woods might be my favorite Sondheim musical, if not my favorite musical in general. The stage show does a wonderful job of juggling so many different stories all at once, keeping true to the original fairy tales while also bending them to tell a different story. On top of that, it's rife with humor. That is, until you get to the 2/3 mark. Then all the gloves are off, and even though it technically ends happily, all's not right with the world still. And I can very much understand wanting to bring it to film. The only proper recording of it is with the original 1980s cast, which is wonderful, but part of you does wonder, what can we add to the story that modern technology allows us? And for the first half of the film, they do a pretty decent job. But from the wedding celebration onwards, it's all downhill. The first half is almost beat for beat like the stage show, and of course there would have to be some changes to make in order for it to fit a 2-hour runtime, but the changes that they made actually hurt the story and, frankly, sullied all that was good with the stage show. The smallest of my complaints is that Cinderella going to her mother's grave after the initial giant attack was rather clunky. The film really didn't give us a reason as to why she would leave the supposed safety of the castle, or why she thought to break off from her royal entourage. On stage before the castle is destroyed, Cinderella's birds warn her that something has happened to her mother's tree grave. But here, she just happens to be at the tree, and for those of us who didn't see the stage show, we don't quite know why she's just there. Now that I've got that little bit out of the way, on to the points that really ruin the movie for me. Meryl Streep does a wonderful job as the witch, but hers was the character that was ruined most in this movie. By changing when she runs into Rapunzel and the prince after the wedding to after meeting the giant for the first time, for those of us who don't know that she lost her magic when she became young and beautiful again, we're just stuck there wondering, why isn't she doing anything to the giant? To our knowledge, she has her powers, so why is she just standing there like the normies? Even if she knew that she couldn't pest the giant, surely she could have done something else. We don't know the extent of the witch's powers, so we don't know exactly where her range is. And we also have no idea as to why she's so keen to end Jack. In the stage show, it's because she just watched her adoptive daughter be crushed by the giant. And on top of that, her house and garden was destroyed. Even though the witch doesn't have time to let it sink in, she's still dealing with major losses here. And she knows that if she continues to let the giant run around, more people are going to die. More people are going to lose their children, their livelihoods. So someone has to do something. And the best plan that everyone around her can think of is to just protect Jack, which wouldn't stop the giant at all. So she felt that she had to do what everyone else refused to, so as to end everyone else's suffering. But we don't have that with the movie version. Instead, it just seems like she's being cruel because she's a witch and she does cruel things. Otherwise, there's no rhyme or reason as to why she wants to give up Jack. And I guess, yeah, maybe she was attached to her garden, but compare that to watching her daughter die, it's rather small beans. And then on top of all that, when she finally does run into Rapunzel, learns that she doesn't have her magic anymore, and Rapunzel runs off, Rapunzel doesn't die. She just exits the movie with her prince. And that's all well and good for her, except again, it hurts the witch's character. She has that lovely song about children not listening to wisdoms that their parents tried to instill in them, and in the stage version, it hits a lot harder because how the witch went about teaching Rapunzel, i.e. by not really teaching her and sheltering her whole life, Rapunzel refused to heed the witch's warnings about the giant and ended up dead for it. On the one hand, yes, while the witch is singing about how children refuse to hear their parents, there's also the gut-wrenching irony of, well, even though the witch was right in this instance, she hasn't been doing the correct thing up until this point, so her final warning was rendered mute. But we don't get that in the movie. All we have is Rapunzel runs away, we don't know what happens to her, and the witch is just left there lamenting how Rapunzel didn't do as she said. There's no punch to it, and it makes the witch look like a worse person, as it seems that all she wants is just Rapunzel to be her prisoner, instead of, I am trying to protect you, I'm doing it in all wrong ways, but I'm still trying to keep you safe. And frankly, that's a lot more interesting than, I'm the witch, I'm not good or nice. Hell, I'm not even right. Not to mention, the comment of when you're dead has no weight to it when the witch says it in the movie version, because she's not dealing with Rapunzel's death, so it comes off as just being cold to someone who just lost their wife. And what they chose to cut from the movie also negatively affected Cinderella and her prince. For Cinderella, she had no time to come forward with being a princess. It's highly uncertain how much time passed from her getting together with the prince and the wedding celebration, and with the cut directly from one scene to the other, it might as well have been a week or less or about that time. So she never gets the chance to want something in between her father's house and the castle. We don't fully understand why Cinderella says this at the end of the movie to the prince. The only justification I can think of is, well, she has feelings about the prince cheating on her, but that doesn't really quite capture why she feels that she doesn't want the dream of the castle. And as for the prince, because of this short time span, he has no time to get bored of Cinderella. In the stage show, he gets the thing that he wants, spends time with it, i.e. Cinderella, and then like a child, moves on to the next adventure to find the next object of his desire, i.e. Sleeping Beauty. But in here, he gets Cinderella and then immediately doesn't seem to care for her all that much. There's no time for him to grow tired of her indecisiveness, thus leading him to be so taken with the baker's wife's independence. Yes, Cinderella's prince is a terrible person to begin with, but it's far less interesting the route the movie chose to portray him. And again, I know that they had to cut some things for time, but couldn't they have left just a little bit of the song No More? They basically reduced this musing on the desire to just leave your problems, but then having to recognize that doing so just leaves you a vagabond, alone, and even more lost than you were before. And then also having to recognize that the baker specifically doing so will just be the same as what his father did to him. But in the movie, they cut most of that except for one line with the baker's father telling his son to just be better than him. And in the text, it sounds like it's expressing the same message, but again, it leaves so much to the wayside to the point where it's a rather dull moment. It's not emotional, and it seems like that scene is in there just to give the baker a reason to turn back. And this especially hurts in the movie because they built up the baker's resentment of what his father did to him. Right from the start of his journey, he learns about how his father just up and left him after his mom died, and so a moment where he recognizes that he's about to do to his son what his father had done to him would have been just the punch in the gut that his story needed. All of this put together turns what was almost a pretty decent adaptation into a they tried type movie. It leaves those familiar with the musical disappointed and frustrated, and those who are not just kind of confused because they don't have the context that those who saw it on stage do. And it really sucks because this movie was, for me at least, starting to prove that you can adapt a musical like Into the Woods to film. But the things that they chose to cut for time made the movie far inferior to the stage show, make me wonder, well, why would I watch it? I've got the original cast recording DVD, I'll pop that in instead. Thank you very much for consuming this video, and for those who want to talk with me on musicals, Steven Universe, Degrassi, almost anything, hit me up on Twitter. You can find me at NotAVampyre, and like with YouTube comments, I will respond if I've got something to say, just might take me a little while. Thank you very much again, and until next time.